All right. Hello, Anna Navarro. How are you?
I'm okay.
We did not have you on the podcast last week. People were very upset. They missed you. You're back. I'm very excited. We are talking about this incredible, this horrible plane crash that happened yesterday. And now also this press conference that just happened. The View was preempted for part of it on the East Coast. If you missed it, you can check us out online. But basically, we're all thinking of the families of the victims of this horrible plane crash between the plane and the helicopter. I think it took the lives of 64 people. This morning, President Trump had a press conference and blamed this on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And he said Buttigieg had, quote, run the Department of Transportation right into the ground with his DEI policies. I think I can imagine, but what's your reaction to this?
I am so angry right now. I am so angry with the people that I'm not angry with Donald Trump because this is who Donald Trump is. He is heartless. He is soulless. He blames things without having any evidence. He is irresponsible. It is incredibly irresponsible for him to go out there and use the presidential bully pulpit when we don't even know what's happened yet. It is incredibly cruel for him as commander-in-chief to go out there and say that 3 people who were flying that helicopter, serving their country, died because of DEI. How dare he? But you know what? That is who he is. I always said, you always heard me say, that one of the things that a commander-in-chief and a president of the United States needed to be able to do is console the nation in a moment of grief. Be consoler-in-chief. Something that Joe Biden did quite well, and frankly, most presidents have done quite well but it requires a level of human empathy. It requires an iota of relating and feeling somebody else's pain.
Sure, I don't think that's a
which he
Republican-Democrat
absolutely
thing.
lacks.
Because,
but the people I'm furious at are the people who, knowing who he is, because it's not like we're learning this, who knowing exactly who he is, voted for him because of the price of the eggs that are going up and keep going up and will continue going up with more deportations and more bird flu and more everything. I am furious at the Venezuelans and Cubans and Nicaraguans in Miami who voted for him and are now on Instagram crying because their wives are getting picked up and deported, because people they know and their friends have now TPS, temporary protective status for the Venezuelans, hasn't been renewed. And now they're having buyer's remorse because they're seeing that it's not just criminals getting rounded up. The other day on Sunday, they picked up like 1,200 people. 52% were criminals, which means 48%. Means 600 people were hardworking immigrants who are getting picked up in these raids. I am horrified at the people criticizing Selena Gomez for showing empathy with her community. And you have to understand, when you are Latino, this strikes different than when you're not. Because it is our community that is being profiled and targeted. You don't see planes you don't see Russians in North Miami Beach getting picked up. You don't see planes heading to Russia, do you? Nope. And there's plenty of criminals from Russia and gangs that are in this country and from every country. Not just Russia, not just this, not just that, but certainly not just Mexico. The 200 people that were taken to Colombia the other day, that kerfuffle, it was reported, none of them were criminals. And so, America, this is what you did. This is what you did. And we, the rest of us, have to live with the effects and consequences of having elected this heartless liar. And I'm going to continue calling him a liar, regardless of who likes it or not. Because somebody who goes to the presidential briefing room and says that he's frozen all government hiring and government spending and grants. Look at the grief that cost. There are people who thought they were going to start working for the government, who sold their houses, people who voted for Trump. I read this guy begging Trump, please, I voted for you. My wife was hired by the Veterans Administration to go work at a hospital. We sold our house. Now what do we do? Well, buddy, what does the country do? And so the other day he goes out there and he claims that, so did his press secretary, that the reason for the grants freezing and, freezing all the grants and loans and government programs is because $50 million in condoms had been sent to Gaza. Okay. USAID gets condoms for about $0.05, so 5 cents a piece. 50 million in condoms is 1 billion condoms to Gaza, a 25-mile stretch of territory that's being bombed out. He lies. He lies, and people believe him. He lied about the U.S. military going into California and turning on the water like if they had stormed the Bastille. He lied about that. And so we now have a president that has no common sense, that has no empathy, that has no integrity, that has absolutely no intention of representing all Americans, and that lies. And we have him for another 3 years and 50 weeks.
So first 2 weeks, you're not a fan.
So other than that, Brian,
you're not a fan of the first 2 weeks. Let's talk about a few things that you mentioned. Yesterday was the confirmation hearings of President Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary nominee, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Did you get to watch? What were your takeaways of that hearing? And do you think it'll be confirmed?
Terrifying. I thought that hearing was terrifying in the same way that I think Pete Hegseth being Department of Defense is terrifying. I don't know if he's going to be confirmed. I suspect the same 3 Republicans who voted against Hegseth, McConnell, Murkowski, and Collins, are going to vote against RFK. I don't know if that's enough, but it's a very similar situation in that Pete Hegseth, who's now the Secretary of Defense, was not only unqualified, inexperienced, had no managerial experience, had lacked basic knowledge of the department he's now leading, but he also had all of these ethical and personal issues. And one of his closest relatives, his mother, right, her emails were on record expressing her concern to him, leaked emails. This is a very similar situation. You've got a man in RFK who does not know the difference between Medicaid and Medicare.
That was surprising.
Who got asked how many babies are born every year in the United States that fall into Medicaid. And he said 30 million babies. The answer is 1.4 million. So not only does he have no managerial skills, not only does he know nothing about these departments, but then he's also got these horrible ethical issues and personal issues. And one of his relatives, in this case, Caroline Kennedy, who is a woman that's
pretty well respected,
I think thought as a serious person.
Yes.
A serious person who loves her family and her entire life has tried to keep the Kennedy legacy burning. For her to step out and say the things she did and record it and make it public. So she didn't just send the letter to the senators, right? Which would have gone on the record.
Right.
She recorded it and put it out on social media so that we would see
that
it.
way. Yes.
But you know what? They voted for Hegseth. So I wouldn't be surprised if they vote for him. God help us all. Speaking
of the Secretary of Defense, he and President Trump have been saying that the U.S. may be sending migrants to Guantanamo Bay. Tell me what you think of this.
Well, like I told you last night, if they send me, please make sure Chacha's taken care of. Your daughter can keep Chacha. She's been wanting her.
She's excited about the prospect, but I don't believe you'll be sent to Guantanamo Bay. But
well, I'm a U.S. citizen,
yes,
whether people like it or not, and a proud one. Look, this Guantanamo thing has been done before.
Yeah.
Right? I live in Miami. I remember when we had a Cuban refugee crisis, a Cuban rafter crisis in the 90s under Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton turned Guantanamo into a processing center. So there were, thousands and thousands of Cubans who were housed in Guantanamo while they were processed. And I think most of them came into America. This would be a different use for Guantanamo. But, I think he's getting this idea from like what's happening in El Salvador, where the president there, Nayib Bukele, has really cracked down on gang criminals and and puts them in jail, gets accused of a bunch of human rights violations. But frankly, Salvadorians are very happy, and he's brought the crime down. Now, I will say this to you. I have said this many times. As an immigrant, I am particularly offended by any immigrant who comes to this great country where most of us come to work hard and live in freedom and have better opportunities for ourselves and our children. Those people who come here and commit crimes, as far as I'm concerned, throw everything you got at them.
Yeah.
So if he wants, if you're talking about gathering up the Tren de Aragua people and the murderers and the rapists and the violent criminals, and putting them in Guantanamo, I don't care if you put them in Alcatraz. I don't care if you put them in Guantanamo. I'm sure there's going to be human rights violations. Somebody can sue over that. But the problem is what we have seen since these deportations began, right? Which is that it is not only criminals getting rounded up. It is mothers and fathers and wives and people who have lived in this country for decades, who are part of our families, who are part of our businesses, who are part of our lives, who are part of our society, who our children go to school with, who are getting picked up. And if he's going to be sending those to Guantanamo, I just can't with the cruelty. And people need to figure out how we balance this information and consuming this information and keeping ourselves sane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I already feel it affecting me. I'm not sleeping the way I slept until January 20th.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking to myself, how many times on this show and on this podcast did I say people need to prepare?
Many times.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I got poo-pooed.
Yeah. And you were always someone who thought this was a possibility.
No, not a possibility. I mean, what did Maya Angelou tell us?
When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time.
Okay. So how many times does Donald Trump need to show me who he is? This is who he has been his entire life. Who are these people that thought that because he won a second time, he'd be a different human being? Nobody changes, and nobody changes at 78.
No.
Certainly not for the,
I still found the press conference shocking. I know I shouldn't have, but
nothing is. Frankly, it's infuriating. And Democrats have had two wins, or anti-Trumpers have had to win. Team normal, team sane Americans, Team America, as Hakeem Jeffries framed it, have had two wins in the last few days. One was with the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes.
Right?
That was reversed quickly.
That was reversed quickly because of public outrage. And one was with the freezing of all of these government grants and loans because of public outrage. So what this has shown us very quickly is that we cannot be paralyzed by fear, by shock. We have got to get into action, and we have got to get outraged, which is what I have always believed. I don't understand why there's no marches going on. I'm going to call Mark Muriel. I'm going to call Janet Murguia of Unidos La Raza. I'm going to call, the Urban League. Where are we? Why are we not marching in the streets and expressing our outrage and anger as Americans? It is our right to do so, to call our Congress people, to call our senators and say, we will not stand for this. We don't like this.
Yeah, it seems like there's been a change in the last couple of days. I feel like people are starting, really since the inauguration, I guess. People that were kind of stunned by the re-election seem to be coming out of it a little bit. But we will see. We will see. It feels different than the first time he was elected, but it's starting to feel familiar.
I think the reaction felt different.
Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think your word of stunned is correct. It's also like, it feels like it's such a barrage that you have a hard time. I mean, it's,
Well, that's intentional. We know this.
It was
Yeah.
just 10 days ago that he pardoned 1,500 criminals.
Right.
The January 6 people.
But flooding the zone is a strategic decision they make, and it works.
Right.
There's so many things that I said last week, going into the weekend, I would have been certain that we'd be talking about him firing inspector generals or something else, and things keep happening so quickly that these important things get swept under the rug or beneath the notice because there's another giant.
That's another
thing.
one where people
Yeah.
fought back. The inspector general said, "You can't fire us.
Yeah.
You've got to, you can't fire us like this. You've got to give us, they united. They have a coalition of inspector generals. You've got to give us, 30 days notice and a reason. This is not a monarchy, for God's sakes."
Yeah. It's an interesting point here that you said that public outrage can work. I think so.
Yeah, but people can't get, I have said this forever. People can't get numb
Right.
to the cruelty. People can't get numb to the insanity. People cannot normalize what is not normal, and people cannot be afraid.
All right.
They are counting on us being silent because we are afraid.
All right. I got to bring you out of this moment
How?
you're in. So I got a question from the listener. Here we go.
How are you
This
going to
is-
bring me out?
This is
I
from
feel like I need some sort of IV or something.
This is from Marcos in Idaho. Anna, I am a 32-year-old gay news reporter and anchor in the Pacific Northwest. I'm debating about applying to jobs in Miami this fall. What advice would you give to someone wanting to make the move to Miami? Your commentary makes me laugh, and I love how much you love Florida.
Look, Florida is great. We've got great weather. You all are freezing here in Florida. It's
We really are
great. We
cold.
got stone crab. We got
Yeah.
sun. It's fun. What would I say about moving to Florida? First, it's gotten really expensive. Miami has
Yeah.
gotten really expensive. Make sure you understand what's going on with the housing market before you make the jump, because it's become a problem, right? All of these damn rich New Yorkers moved down and they haven't moved back to New York. They moved down during COVID and they like it. You've got to be able to, if you're going to move down to Miami, you got to love and appreciate diversity and everything that means, right? If you're one of these people who's going to get upset because you go to Publix and nobody speaks English at the deli,
It's not for you?
maybe you should Instacart.
I love a Publix, I'm going to say. I do enjoy a Publix.
Oh, Publix is look, it's I think it's a place where there's a lot of acceptance for gays, certainly because of the diversity, but there's also a lot of Trumpers. It's a very politically engaged community, it means that you're going to be, unless you live in some sort of bubble, you're probably going to be coexisting with a bunch of people who voted for Trump. I have them in my family. Sending me his tweets where he lies as if they were papal edicts.
Yeah. Yeah.
The amount of time that I am spending
Fact-checking.
fact-checking my own family
I do it
members.
with my friends, too. Yeah.
Yeah, but don't you at some point say, okay, what's the point? And I'm spending too much time on this. If they want, like I said to one of my relatives this week, look, man, if you want to live like this, if you want to live in a bubble of alternative facts, he calls them interchangeable words. Like when I say, this is a lie. Oh no, that's just an interchangeable word.
I don't mind when something not true is posted in my little chats, but then when there's a conversation that evolves out of that thing, and then there's 7 or 8 people believing it, and then I finally have to say, guys, just Google, just go to Google, look at a reliable source, please, I beg you.
Yeah. I get accused of spinning a media narrative by my relatives.
Yes.
Who I constantly, feed and give free stuff to.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you for joining me today, Anna.
Boy,
I barely spoke today. You were fired up. This is good.
I
understand.
Furious.
I understand.
I am so furious at what's happening in the country and to the Latino community in Miami. My city's going to change for the worse because of all of this. And there's so many damn people who are complicit and silent.
Well, that's it for this week here on Behind the Table, but we have a new view tomorrow. Anna Navarro will be there. We'll be talking about this, and we'll also be talking with Michael Strahan, who has
love him.
Yeah, who's got a documentary out that's really impactful and touching.
I ran into him
No.
in South Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
What are the odds of that?
He was on safari. I was on safari.
Yeah,
We
right.
ran into each other at the, I think it was either the Johannesburg or Cape Town airport. I don't know, but or maybe it was Dubai. It was a big airport. And so they had little carts taking us to the thing. Have you ever been to Dubai?
I have not. And I'm also curious for you on safari. Now, I mean, I know it's obviously it's you and Michael Strahan. This is an elevated safari, but what are you sleeping on?
Like 3,000 thread cotton.
Okay.
I mean, I ain't doing it.
You're not like roughing it. This is beyond glamping.
No,
this is a whole nother level of thing.
The level of luxury that I saw in the safaris in Africa.
Okay.
I mean, like 100 different types of gin, which I don't drink. You know, the wines, the food. It's like you land in the middle of a forest, like a savanna. Right? There's all of these trees. You don't even know where you're landing. You look down and you're like, where am I landing? And all of a sudden this like strip of land materializes, and that's where dirt strip, and that's where you land. And you're in the middle of nowhere, and you go to this lodge and you have like perfect Wi-Fi, which I don't even have in Coral Gables in my house. Like
perfect Wi-Fi and Michael Strahan. What else do you need?
Nothing.
There you go. Oh, also The Weekend View on ABC News Live this Saturday and Sunday morning. Check it out. See you Monday.